no signs of forced entry. Folks, that's a myth. No signs of forced entry. At that time, there were 8 signs of forced entry documented by Boulder police officers.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello from Boulder, Colorado, and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic community in true crime. There's a lot of emphasis on footprints or the lack of in the snow, but one thing both John and Patsy have admitted are tracks, bicycle tracks in the snow in front of the Ramsey home. If John Bonet didn't make them, who did? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're enjoying this analysis, the Into the Fabric of analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Now, being in Boulder and actually riding on its labyrinth of pristine bicycle paths is something to experience. I mean, Boulder isn't Boulder without bicycle paths. Boulder isn't Boulder without a bicycle. Patsy Ramsey references precisely this cycling community, the society connected with bicycle paths during her interview in 1998 with the police. Trip to Muth. Were there any excursions or outings that Fleet White took your children on as well as his children? Patsy. I'm sure there probably were. Trip to Muth. Any that you recall? Patsy. Not right off the top of my head. I mean, we went biking out on the bike trails once all together, all of us. Now, I spent a few glorious days in mid-May in Boulder, and although my host made a bicycle available, an old bike belonging to his son, it had seen better days and needed both tires pumped. I was so keen to ride, though, we headed to University Cycles, the same store Patsy used to buy John Bonet's bicycle, and there I bought a spiffy, heavy-duty pump for $50, and it really was worth it. Pumped the tires, and the next thing I was one of the footloose and fancy-free freewheeling along rivers and streams, green hills and dales through Boulder. What I'm trying to convey is that no one is going to live in Boulder for any length of time without a bicycle, least of all the Ramseys. If you live in Boulder, bicycles are an absolutely integral part of the lifestyle. But what about the ominous signs? Well, in the Ramsey's own statement, something that ought to be fairly innocent achieves an ominous tone once we wade deeper and deeper into the quagmire of this case. For example, did you know one of the artifacts found with John Bonet in the vault where she was left was a little boy's bicycle? So right next to this little girl's body, dead body, is a little boy's no longer used bicycle, discarded bicycle. That bicycle, in a way, symbolized a little boy's childhood, and I think it died with John Bonet in that small, cold, infernally dark room. Now, if you think John Bonet died, I think that little boy's childhood also died in that same place, at that same time. Now, if we deal with the photographic narrative, to those who say the bicycle narrative is a wild goose chase, and I've heard many people say that, a narrative that leads nowhere and reveals nothing, I would say, hold your horses. John Bonet herself is pictured cheering right behind her bicycle. She's looking very upbeat. About what? About a bicycle. So even if you don't care about bicycles, John Bonet did. And I'll bet so did her brother too. It's also tempting to assume that no one is trying to hide any aspect of the bicycle narrative, especially given this photo. But the above image was only released relatively recently in 2019. If you think about 2019, is that something like 20-something years after the events, you only release an image of Burke and John Bonet by the Christmas tree? Why have you held it back all this time? So many media articles written in which this picture doesn't appear. So another way of thinking about this image of John Bonet actually sitting on a new bike and her brother standing alongside is that it was deliberately held back for well over a decade. Why? Why hold back this image for such a long period? Again, although two bicycles appear in some of the last images of JonBenet, that's all we get to see, two bicycles. It's easy to assume from these images and based on what Burke said, we both got bikes, that there were only two bicycles, one for Burke and one for JonBenet. But that's not what their parents say. Patsy has already referred to the entire Ramsey family cycling with the Whites. Well, were the Ramsey kids riding these bikes? Burke on the little Batman bike, JonBenet on the little pink bike, the little pink tricycle? I don't think so. If so, the Christmas of 1996 was a sort of coming of age for JonBenet when she was finally upgraded to a proper bicycle for a big girl, and apparently so was everyone else. The Ramseys had certainly earned it, each in their own way. Why the bicycle narrative matters is there may be a dark side to it that points to an area of the Ramsey case where angels fear to tread. What if there was an intruder of sorts at the Ramsey home, and what if after the incident that intruder left on a bicycle? Interesting theory, but is there any evidence to support it? Now, there's a lot of evidence, but we're going to restrict ourselves to the sort of bicycle evidence. Is there anything buried in the Ramsey statements that takes us in that direction? Well, thanks to the wonders of technology, it takes less than 20 minutes to source John and Patsy's 1997-1998 police statements, 2 apiece, that's 4 in total, and do a filtered search for the word bicycle. The results are curious. In the 1997 statements, the word bicycle appears only once in Patsy's statement. In 1998, there is a clear uptick with 10 references to bicycle in John's statement and 8 references from Patsy's. So a total of 18 references to bicycle in 1998 versus just the one in 1997. Plus, there are a whopping 24 additional references to the word bike in John's 1998 statement and 11 more references to bike in Patsy's statements from 1998. That's a total of over 50 references to cycling. That's a lot of talk about bikes, bicycling and cycling paths. This suggests to me that almost 2 years after the incident, and with the original statements in hand, the police felt this area was an important one to clarify, to dig deeper into, to probe. I mean, it's not like there were 53 references in the beginning and then almost none a year later. It's the opposite. So clearly, as time went by and the authorities had more context and more intel to work with, they gave more priority to the Christmas gifts and more specifically the bicycle narrative. The last thing JonBenet did in her short life was ride her new bicycle, and I know at some point I did consider the possibility that she may have, this crack on her skull may have come from a fall off her bike. A fall, or that she was pushed, or that she slipped on the snow, and that is how she got that ghastly crack on her head. But consider that there are bicycles throughout the Christmas fabric. It's the last thing JonBenet does in the last light of her last day. And there's also a little boy's bicycle sitting right beside her in a makeshift tomb. Now, have you ever heard the story that Burke was going to get a bicycle for his birthday? That's not Ramsey Apocrypha, that's real. Let's go to the 1998 statement. Patsy says, "These were gifts I think I was holding back for Burke's birthday, trip to Muth. They are in the red and white and yellow FAO Schwartz wrapping." Patsy Ramsey. Right. JonBenet got a bicycle that year. I got a university bicycle and she got a twin doll, which I mail ordered. And so here Patsy means she got a bicycle from University Bicycles. The gifts that were being held over for Burke were all already wrapped, and they were basically from FAO Schwartz. Patsy doesn't include a bicycle in Burke's gifts, and if there is a bicycle, it's certainly absent from the Ramsey home. We don't see it sort of lying around anywhere. Now, I actually went over to University Bicycles when I was in Boulder and encountered a very polite fresh-faced young man who couldn't possibly have worked in the store during the Christmas of 1996. While I was casually buying a bicycle pump, I casually asked if there was anyone around who worked in the store in the late 90s. Just the owner, I was told. Who's the owner? Doug's the owner. Where's Doug? Doug's in Mexico. I emailed Doug to ask him specifically if he remembers the Ramseys buying 4 bicycles from him. You'd expect a purchase of that size would register, that he would remember it. But so far, and it's something like 2 weeks later, Doug's not responded to my email. Anyway, let's go back to the 1998 statements, again to what Patsy Ramsey said. Tom Haney, did she get to ride her bike? Patsy, she got to ride her bike. Tom, Christmas Day? Patsy, out in the back driveway. Tom, you don't remember the weather that day was? Patsy, sunny, nice. Tom, so did she get much time on it? Was it training wheel equipped, or was she able to ride a 2-wheeler by herself? Patsy, I don't think it had training wheels. I think it did. Not quite sure what she means by that. Tom, did she get much time on it? Could you give us a clue? Patsy, no idea, riding out in the back. Tom, but she was able to handle it. She didn't crash or anything. Patsy, no. So yet Tom Haney is on the same track. Could she have gotten hurt from falling off her bicycle? Tom, do you remember shopping before Christmas? Did you go with somebody? Patsy, shopping? Tom, yeah. Patsy, can't remember. I don't remember what everybody got. It's quite a statement to make. I don't remember what everybody got. Really? You don't remember what everybody got for Christmas? That Christmas? Tom Haney, that was another one of the questions. What he means by that is, one of the questions the police had in mind that they wanted to follow up on, that they wanted to clarify, is what everybody got for Christmas. And so Patsy says, Burke got a Nintendo 64. That was a big deal. I got that down at some little computer store, kind of place down by Pirelli's. Baseline and 30th or around there. GameWorks got that right before Christmas. To repeat, the bicycle narrative really only gained traction during the second set of interviews, when the cops had had time to stew in the fabric and dynamics of the Ramsey case. And so this is where Patsy says, I got a bicycle. Tom, okay, from John. Patsy, from Santa Claus. What do you think Patsy means by this? Did Santa give everyone bicycles, or does she mean she bought the bicycles? Because clearly it's not from John. Because how could John give himself a bicycle? It's the kind of thing Santa would give everybody. You know, the biggest gift, the most spectacular gift. Patsy says, this is the yard, the front yard. I see tracks here in the snow. Let me repeat that. Patsy volunteers here saying, I see tracks here in the snow. And she indirectly refers to these tracks as bicycle tracks. It's again curious that you never really hear, or you hear constantly about footprints, no footprints, snow, no snow, but you never hear about the bicycle tracks in the snow. Anyway, Detective Tom Haney says, do you know what could have caused that? Meaning, what caused the tracks in the snow? Patsy says, I don't know, unless Burke rode his bicycle out there. Couldn't it have been someone else besides Burke? Someone else besides John Bonet? But this is a rare acknowledgement, including Burke in the bicycle narrative. Where's Burke's bike in the family Christmas photos? Hell, in the crime scene photos of the entire Ramsey home. So you might say, I accept that Burke rode his bicycle there. Okay, you're accepted. So where is Burke's bicycle? Tom Haney goes on to say, does that look like the right size for that? Patsy says, yeah. Trip to Muth. Was he also riding his bike? Patsy, yeah, he would have ridden it. She would not. She was only allowed back on the back, most likely. But he was older and he was used to riding a bicycle. When Burke went on to Dr. Phil, what did he say he got for Christmas? He said, we both got bikes. So how come we never see it? And what's more, never see Burke riding a bicycle? There are so many images of John Bonet on a bicycle or tricycle. Now let's re-examine John's statements. And from John's statements, we've got to ask, were there 2, 3, or 4 bicycles? So let's review what we know. We can safely assume that there were at least 2 brand new bicycles in the home that Christmas, one for the mother and one for the daughter. Well, what about John? Did he have a bike? Well, this is what John said in 1998. These tracks in the snow here might have been bicycle tracks. So here you have John and Patsy both confirming bicycle tracks in the snow. Lou Smith says, that's in photograph. John says, right, it wasn't unusual for him to ride through the yard. Lou Smith, did you say Burke had a bicycle that Christmas? And this is such a critical question. Let's repeat it. Lou Smith, did you say he, Burke, had a bicycle that Christmas? But instead of answering the question, John says he got a bicycle, which makes that bicycle number 3, John Ramsey. I know I got a bicycle. I think that's what it was. I gave myself a bicycle. So here John is saying the tracks were left by Burke, that it wasn't unusual for Burke to ride through the yard, but that John gave himself a bicycle. Lou Smith, that Christmas. John Ramsey, yeah, Patsy got a bicycle, I got a bicycle, John Bonet got a bicycle, Burke already had one, I'm pretty sure. I don't know what it is, I guess. So how many bicycles are we talking about? 3 and one less new one, one that was less new, which no one has ever seen, or 4 brand new bikes. Which do you think it is? Elsewhere, John repeats the idea that Burke was going to get a bicycle, likely for his next birthday. But if the Ramseys had already bought Burke's birthday gifts, also found in the wine cellar, why not the bicycle as well? John Ramsey. And also, why would Burke himself say we both got bikes when he hadn't had his birthday yet at that point, over Christmas? Anyway, John Ramsey says, yeah, Christmas Eve, we'd given John Bonet a bike, we got Patsy a bike, we were giving Burke a bike, but not that year. Elsewhere in the narrative, John brings up bicycle tread tires. That's what they look like. Mountain bike tire, completely out of his own, while talking about the south door, and unfortunately at this point, Lou interrupts him. So again, how many bikes were there? Lou Smith. I've looked at a lot of pictures in regards to this particular case, and I can't remember seeing any bikes. What happened to the bikes? Indeed. Now, if you still think the bike narrative is a wild goose chase, at one point John basically counts the bikes in the interview. John Ramsey. Well, John Bonet got a bike. I think Burke got a bike too. It seems like we had 3 bikes there. Okay, now I'm confused. I thought the 3 bikes were John Bonet's and Patsy's and John's. Now it's Burke's bike, but not John's. Also curious, Patsy kept Burke's bike for sentimental value. We're talking about that Batman bike. And yet John Bonet's bike was given away, according to John. Why? And where's Burke's bike today? If we go back to this idea of photographs being withheld, well, what do we see in the photographs besides John Bonet and Burke and also Patsy? We see bicycles. How many bicycles do we see? Well, for the longest time, we only see 2 bicycles. And if you go into Cotton Star's channel, you may have seen and heard him talking about a 3rd bike. It's the bike in the 3rd bike that you see or struggle to see in the background of John Bonet with her mother. That's 3 bikes in terms of the photographic narrative. Isn't that why the photographic narrative has been held back? Because if you could see the complete narrative, you'd see 4 bikes. And then after the incident, you'd be asking, well, where is the 4th bike? What happened to the 4th bike? I don't think it's sufficient to end there. I don't think one should stop there and simply say, well, there's some strange thing going on. Are there 4 bikes, 3 bikes, or 2 bikes? I think one's got to say, at the end of the day, I think there were 4 bikes. There's suspicion around this aspect. There's inconsistency around this aspect. And so where does it take us? Well, where I think it takes us is there were 4 bikes. Only 3 bikes were found at the scene. Somebody left the Ramsey home that night on probably Burke's bike. Why not John's bike or Patsy's bike? Who left on Burke's bike? Was an intruder unknown to the Ramseys or an intruder known to the Ramseys? Well, what if it was the latter? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.